All right, so I'm going to take you through a simple flow of how we see discipleship going through with the tools provided at NoPlaceLeftArmy.net. And so the first thing that we see is that usually a relationship begins with the sharing of the gospel, or maybe it happens later in the relationship. What we train people to do is to share their 30-second testimony or the two kingdoms illustration to share the gospel. We've realized that people really have four usual responses. The first one being that they're not interested, in which case we encourage you to rejoice in your obedience to share the gospel. That's awesome. Really, the second response that we see that people have is that they're open to learning more about Jesus, in which case we encourage you to take them through the signs of John. We have a sheet of paper on the website that'll help guide you through the signs of John. At the end of each one of these signs, we ask the question if they want to make Jesus king. In the case that they do not want to make Jesus king, continue to rejoice in your obedience. So after you've taken them through all 10 of those, if they still do not want to make Jesus king, rejoice in your obedience. If they do want to make Jesus king, you're going to treat them just like if you shared the gospel with them the first time and they may decide to make Jesus king that very first time. In which case you're going to take them through immediate or short-term discipleship. Really, the only difference between the two is how much time you're going to have with that person. And so if you have one meeting or 1 week with that person, we're going to encourage you to go through immediate discipleship. Immediate and short-term discipleship are the same sheet of paper that you can take them through, and it's on the website. Short-term discipleship takes about 6 weeks usually. In which case, there's 6 different lessons. And so if you got a little bit more time, we would really suggest taking them through the short-term discipleship lessons. The last possibility is that they're existing believer, that they've already made Jesus king. In which case, the next really big question is, are they in a body of believers? Are they in a church? If yes, then we encourage you to train them in the gospel and to mobilize them into their oikos so that we can equip more people to go out there and spread the good news. If not, then invite them to your group, your church, that you are training other people in, and continue that short-term discipleship lesson. At the end of the short-term discipleship, you're going to hit the Obey survey. The Obey survey takes into account all of the commands from the short-term discipleship and really gauges how your church is doing in their obedience. So if they do not pass, they're not being obedient in the commands or the short-term discipleship, then we're going to encourage you to go back to those things, those lessons that they're not being obedient in, and try to help clarify and retrain them in those lessons. In the event that they do pass, really the next big question is there an emerging leader in the group? Is there someone that is out there that is sharing the gospel and trying to disciple their friends and start their own church? The answer is yes, and we're going to encourage you to start an A-team with that person. And so the A-team sheet is also located on the website, and some simple questions that'll hold people accountable and help develop those emerging leaders. In addition to that A-team, regardless if they're emerging leader or not, we're going to encourage you to start midterm discipleship. And so an emerging leader, you'll see an A-team and midterm discipleship for the entire church, whereas maybe if that person is not an emerging leader, then you're only going to do midterm discipleship with them. And so as you're going through each one of those lessons, there's many obedience steps that we see in the midterm discipleship, and it's going to lead to another Obey survey. And really, just like before, there's really 2 options. The first one is non-pass, in which case we encourage you to go back and retrain on whatever lesson that they are struggling with. The second one would be that they pass and that they are being obedient in the midterm discipleship as well, in which case you will move on to long-term discipleship. Long-term discipleship is broken into really three different groups. The first one being a conviction study, where people determine their convictions on certain topics. Next one, topical study, and so focusing on the many different topics in the Bible as they relate throughout the Bible. And then finally, an inductive Bible study, just getting much deeper in with these disciples for their long-term discipleship. Last thing we're going to encourage is to download the Seed Sower app. The Seed Sower app is a great way to track and be encouraged by your own obedience in sharing the gospel, and in the future be encouraged by people in your church and their obedience in sharing the gospel. And this way it'll allow you to track who you've shared with and who to follow up with, and a good way to keep track of all those people that you meet as you go out and spread more seed.